So, welcome to the Dallas Film Commission and Creative Industry Podcast. My name is Tony Armer. I am the Film Commissioner and Director of Creative Industries.
And I'm Andrew Vela, the Project Specialist for the Dallas Film and Creative Industries Office.
And so, this episode is going to be kind of like a fun episode where we just talk about our favorite movies and things creatively that have inspired us over the years and why we like them, and kind of do a little bit of a semi deep dive into that.
Deep dive into our lives.
Yeah, well, I don't know about how deep, but
Yeah, well, the movies will reflect what was going on in our lives. So
that's actually a very good point.
Yeah.
You find at different times in your lives you like different things,
Yeah.
especially age-wise. Whatever age you are, and probably whatever mood you're feeling and everything. Oh man, we might get deeper than I thought today.
Because that's true, especially with the mood thing. Because like there are so many movies I have on my watch list that I always want to watch, but you got to wait for the perfect mood.
Right.
And even though I feel like I have major FOMO sometimes with some films, I'm like, I just think I'm as much as I want to watch this right now and just hit play and I have it accessible, ready to hit play, I want to wait till I'm in the right mood to watch this movie because it'll be a whole better experience.
Yeah, I've done that before where you're literally like,
Yeah.
okay, this is on my list. I want to watch it, and I'll start it, and then like 2 minutes in, I'm like, yeah, I can't watch this today.
Yeah, my mood's not right. Yeah.
I'm not into watching this. Like everybody has talked about The Northman, like what a good movie The Northman was.
Oh, it's so good.
And I have it, and I like started to watch it, and then I was just like, I can't do it today.
Yeah, you have to watch that movie when you're like a little on edge, like not upset, but just a little on edge because it's a very like angsty film, and there's a lot of screaming. Like it's a great movie. I saw that twice in theaters, and me and my dad have very similar tastes in films. And then he came to visit me in Dallas when it was in theaters. And he was like, "Man, I want to go watch that Viking movie, the one that has all the screaming in the trailers." And I was like, "The Northman?" And he was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Let's go." And we found the next screening at Alamo Drafthouse, and we went, and he loved it. But that was a good one.
Yeah,
That was a good one.
Yeah, when I was gonna start watching it, I was on a plane from somewhere,
Yeah.
and I had plenty of time, and I started watching it on the plane, and I was like, I can't watch this on the plane.
Oh, that's
This
that's
is-
like a theater film.
Yeah,
too.
this is not a plane movie. I'll wait till I have my 55-inch, widescreen at home to watch this on, because this is not a movie to watch on the plane.
So speaking of watching movies at home, I personally, like, if I'm gonna watch a movie at home, I have to wait till the sun has gone down. And like if it's a movie I really want to watch, like on top of the mood thing, I have to wait till the sun has gone down. I have a 5.1 speaker sound system, so I have like speakers on the side of my ears. I have the bar and I have the subwoofer. And if I'm gonna watch a movie at home, I need to have popcorn. Like it's going to be a theater experience because I'm go to the theater before watching a movie at home. But if I'm in a circumstance where I'm going to watch it at home, it has to be a theater experience. Are you the same way?
Yeah, no, I don't watch movies during the daytime.
Yeah.
Usually I'm busy during the day is
Yeah,
part of
yeah.
it. If the sun is out, I'm either, working, or like I actually want to be outside enjoying myself.
Yeah.
That's why I grew up as a kid, like where the parents make you go outside
Yeah.
to do stuff.
Yeah,
It shows my age a little bit. I did play a lot of video games, but at the same time, it's like I just like to be outside enjoying the weather and doing whatever. But then, like, it's kind of like, after, and a lot of times it's like, always, I can't think of the last time that I actually sat down and ate dinner, like, at my kitchen table.
Yeah.
Like, it's always in front of a movie or TV show that I'm watching, like, and that's when I start. That's like the start.
Yeah.
And I've got the big leather recliner, so it's like,
Dinner on the tables is overrated.
It really is.
You got to watch it with the TV on.
It's like, do we have to have a conversation? Oh my God.
It's 2023. Turn on the TV.
Just turn the TV on,
Yeah. Well, speaking of how we grew up in watching films, talk to me about the earliest films that inspired your like film palette. Like, what did you watch when you were young that started your journey in the movie world?
So, my answers are obviously going to be different than a lot of people, but I grew up, born in 1970, so I guess I'm old now. But so I grew up in the era of when television was 3 channels.
Yeah.
It was 3 channels, and then the 4th UHF channel that you had to, dial in to try and get it because it was fuzzy sometimes, and you're playing with the rabbit ears, and then, eventually getting, cable when, you're like 12 or 13 or something like that. But it was still a different kind of experience. And so I watched as a kid growing up a lot of old westerns with my dad.
Awesome.
You know, so had a real appreciation for the old, you know, John Wayne westerns
Nice.
and Clint Eastwood, you know, the spaghetti westerns and all that. So really love those.
Love that.
And then of course it was, you know, all of the Asian karate martial arts films that
Nice.
you know that so kind of in that same, you know, I'm not going to call myself Robert Rodriguez by any stretch of the imagination, but that, you know, influenced like a Tarantino or Robert Rodriguez or a John Favreau, because
Love that.
we all grew up in that same era of watching films, and so we're kind of all influenced in similar ways there. So you know, all those kinds of films, the old Universal horror films from like the 1930s and 40s, the Wolfman and you know, Frankenstein and all that kind of stuff. Absolutely love those. The 1941 Wolfman, Lon Chaney Jr., still one of my favorite movies.
Amazing. I love that.
Yeah, love that movie.
That's so awesome. For me, I remember because I'm a little bit younger than you.
A little bit.
Just a little bit. And so for me, I remember being in high school or like end of junior high going into high school, and I had this one best friend, and like I don't remember like how early I started watching movies, because obviously everyone watches movies, but like that's when end of junior high going into high school is when I really started to like notice like, man, I'm like addicted to these things. Like I'm always watching movies, and throughout the summers, like especially like that's when it's like blockbuster season, obviously. So every Friday, him and I were at the movies like every single Friday. And then going like towards the end of high school, that's when I got like kind of or mid high school, I got into like international films. And then I started noticing like the Cannes Film Festival logo on everything. And I'm like, what is this logo? And then I started like finding out what the film industry was, like the Cannes Film Festival and Venice and all of these things. And then for me also, the main film that kind of like sparked my interest in the films was The Lord of the Rings.
Sure, yeah.
Like my whole family loves The Lord of the Rings, which is weird because it wasn't just me. Like my dad loves it, my dad's side of the family loves it, my mom loves it, my mom's side of the family, like everybody just loves The Lord of the Rings. And I'm like, what? And then I watched them, and I was like, now they're like literally my favorite movies ever. Like I love international films. I love contemporary films. I love like classics. Like I spend most of my time on the Criterion channel, which is like a film, like it's like basically film school. Like everything you just described, like the Universal monster movies, they literally have a collection on there called Universal Monster Movies, and it's like every single movie you just listed plus more is on there. And like besides all of that, which I really love, The Lord of the Rings will always be like my number one that I will forever rewatch. And it's like those string of movies, the trilogy. It's like once I start it, I can't watch it like the first 30 minutes and then that's it. For me, it's like I have to sit and watch the whole thing and marathon it all. Like I can't start from the second or start from the third. No, I need to start from the first, the very beginning, and go all the way to the end. It's always a marathon for me.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting how like different eras are like that. So I basically grew up like one of the Stranger Things kids. Yeah. minus the alternate reality and the monsters.
Yeah.
But you know, playing Dungeons and Dragons and hopping on the bike and riding our bike to the movie theater, and
Love
you know,
that.
and watching movies and stuff. And you know, whatever was coming out. I remember when Highlander came out, and it was. I think you had to be 17 or older because maybe it was rated R when it came out. So having to sneak into Highlander when it was in the theaters, just so I could see that film, because I don't know, when did that come out? 85. So maybe I was a couple of years too young. I was like 15 or something like that.
Yeah.
So sneaking into Highlander, or seeing Back to the Future in the
I love Back to the
theaters,
Future.
or you know, or Rocky 4. You know, like when you're in high school and Rocky 4 comes out, and then like every guy on the high school football team is running around the high school like, you know, kind of crazy from seeing Rocky 4 or Top Gun, like. That 80s era of growing up, like being between 10 and 19 years old through the 1980s, was just like the ultimate in peak popcorn Hollywood.
Yeah,
film.
I agree. I agree, because even now, like, I feel like, I don't know if it's like a COVID thing, but I feel like there's not a lot of popcorn movies now, and the ones that do come out, they don't resonate with the audience as much as I thought they would, like pre-pandemic. Besides Top Gun, like that was the one that saved the industry, literally saved the industry. Yeah. But even like the recent Harry Potter movies, I don't know if it's just because people were just so into the original films that the new ones,
they're just not as good.
It's never going to be as good. And the new Lord of the Rings films that are gonna come out are not gonna be as good as the old ones.
And
Yeah.
I don't think that's just like, you know, nostalgia talking, where you're
Yeah.
like you're being nostalgic for something you saw when you were younger that had an impact in your life. I think that they're just literally not as
Yeah.
good as
Yeah.
those films were.
No.
And you even look at like the big budget blockbuster movies that come out. Those are the only things that are driving people to the box office. And look at the Marvel films.
Mhm.
The Marvel films, I think people are getting burned out on
100%.
them. They're still
100%.
going because it's like, oh, it's the new Marvel film, I'll go see. But if you look at like the box office for like
The
Ant-Man,
ratings.
like the
Yeah.
second week was like a nosedive. Like people,
Yeah.
and I think people are just kind of like, not to go down that rabbit hole, but everyone still loves the original characters.
Mhm. 100%.
You killed Iron Man.
Yeah. You.
Captain America's gone.
Yeah.
You've made Thor into a joke.
Yeah.
And where's the Hulk? And
Yeah. Yeah.
Black Widow is dead.
Yeah.
Hawkeye's retired, and so now you're going to give us the B team,
Yeah.
the secondary level of
Yeah.
characters, and people are just kind of like, why do I want to watch these?
Yeah. I definitely notice the bubble has kind of bursted, and maybe they're trying to catch up with how people are responding to these films now. And I mean, you see it with the number of Disney Plus shows that they're doing, like the Marvel ones,
yeah.
which they've already said they're going to scale back because, quote unquote, to give them more time to resonate with the audience. But yeah, it's definitely not hitting audiences how it did before.
No, I mean there was just something about those first films, that first
Mhm.
Iron Man, and then that whole thing through the Avengers and all that. And it's hard to recapture that.
Yeah.
Once you kind of burn an audience on just having too much of something.
Yeah.
That's why Christmas is great. It's only once a year. I mean,
Yeah, it's only once a year.
if Christmas was every 25th of every month, people would get over it, right? You wouldn't get excited about that particular, or your birthday.
Yeah.
Good thing we only got one birthday a year because it makes it more interesting.
Yeah, 100%. So have you seen anything recently that's really interested you? Any films? New and old.
I've been so
I know you're a busy guy.
I have been. I've neglected many things. I'm really wanting to see The Fabelmans. I'll probably actually watch it this weekend.
Yeah.
Because I just haven't had time to watch that. I'm trying to think what. Oh, I did go to the movies with a buddy of mine to see another new popcorn kind of film that's out that was a lot of fun, and it was the new Guy Ritchie film.
Oh.
Operation. Why am I blanking on the name?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I think I know what you're talking about.
But the new Guy Ritchie film was a ton of fun. It was really good. It was a very, sort of James Bondian in a certain way, but Guy Ritchie gangstery in a certain way.
Operation Fortune.
Operation Fortune, right? Because Jason Statham's character in the last name is Fortune. So, but that one was a lot of fun. So that was not a heavy thinking foreign film or anything like that. It was just a fun movie to go see. So I liked that one a lot.
No, and I think that's because when I talk to my film friends and what you literally just said it's like sometimes you need that movie that kind of like refreshes your palate, whether it's like a big action movie or just like a comedy. Like sometimes I feel like I watched too much of one style of film. It's like, okay, I need something just to break the palate.
You wanna mix it up and give yourself a little.
Yeah,
you don't want to eat the same cereal every day either.
Exactly,
so,
and you got to change up the milk.
Right.
Whatever.
Something.
Yeah.
So kind of going back a little bit when you we talked about what movies getting started sort of inspired you. So watching all of those as a kid growing up was great. But then really there were a couple of things. So ABC in like the 70s and 80s used to do it was like the Friday night movie.
Yeah.
And I can't remember how often they would do it, but they would always do a James Bond movie like on a whatever Friday night was.
Yeah.
I feel like they would go on like a streak of this, like for a couple months they would do it and then it'd be something different or whatever. But it really became a thing when my friends and I would do sleepovers and we would get together and watch like whatever Bond movie was going to be on, because you didn't have still sort of pre-VHS and everything, before you could kind of go out and just get whatever you wanted, get what you wanted to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And so just watching all of the Bond films from, Dr. No and from Rush with Love and Goldfinger all the way through the Roger Moore films and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I remember being like 13 years old, and Octopussy came out, in 83 with Roger Moore, and Never Say Never Again, the Sean Connery film, both came out in 1983, and like going to the theater like over and over and over again to watch those. But like the first big one that like I was sitting in the theater and watching it, and when it was done, it was like, that's what I want to do for a living, was Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Nice.
So, seeing that, and that was just like, still to this day, like my favorite movie of all time. Like I could just watch that, at any point in time. And just watching that movie, and I'm like, that's what I want to do.
Nice.
And then I'm not alone in that. A bazillion kids around the world were inspired by Star Wars and Raiders and George Lucas and Spielberg and what they've done over the years. But
so since touching on this genre of film, are you a fan of Dune?
I like Dune. Yeah.
You like Dune?
I like the new movie too.
So you watched the old one with David Lynch?
Yeah.
For the 1980 film?
What was crazy is when I saw that film in the theaters when it came out, in whatever year it was, 84, 85, and to this day, I wish I would have kept it. But when you went into the movie, they literally gave you like a little printed fold out that explained who all the characters were and what the world was and everything.
Yeah.
That they literally had to give you because they knew this book was so dense. It was complicated. Like, so you could sit there and like study it like before the movie started, kind of thing. And I don't know if it was just that theater that I went to that they did that, or that was a thing they did on all theaters. But I can only imagine how cool it would be today to have that original thing from 1984, where that little handout that you got at the.
Imagine how much money it's worth.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Like, does it even exist? We'll have to Google that.
And, that would be awesome to just to get a photo of that or something.
There's probably something online. See if we can in post. See if we can find it. Post a picture of this.
I will. Well, that's funny that you say that because if you think about it now, like Alamo Drafthouse, like they show the pre-screening. Like if you're gonna go watch Dune, they show you the history of Dune.
Yeah.
And it's not just because number one, yes, it is a complicated film, but in the story, but. It's just their brand now, and that's awesome.
Which I actually really like. Now I've gotten really into if I'm gonna watch a movie or a TV series or something, especially because TV series now there's so many of them, and you watch so many different ones. Like watching a channel like Screencraft or some of these others that does like a recap of like everything you need to know about the Ant-Man movie in 20 minutes as they lead up, and they give you like the 20. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot all that happened in these other movies before you go see the film, so you have that. And then after the movie, like here are all the Easter eggs and all the things that you missed, and then watching it like when it's over, you just watched it, and then seeing like all the stuff that. So I think that's a really kind of cool modern take on this that helps you. I think it actually helps the films in that it helps you be more engaged in the film. And I feel like my mind is so stuffed with information anymore that I almost need like a refresher to remind me of what I just watched and like the little behind the scenes things.
No, I agree. And like going back to Dune really quick, like when that film was announced, all of my friends had read the books, and I was just excited by it because I knew of the world of Dune, and I was like, okay. I told myself I'm gonna read the book before the film comes out, and it was like they announced it, and it was gonna come out like a year and a half later, and I was like, okay, a year and a half, I can read this book in a year and a half. Let's go, because it's so complicated, and I'm not a big reader, but I do read, and that was the first book that I took notes on because it is like complicated. Like if the movie was complicated, like the book is like even more complicated, and there's like 10 books in the Dune series, and we're getting a trilogy, and it's all based off the first book. So that's how complicated it is. Like, there's a lot, but I loved Dune, and I'm excited for what they're doing next with that.
It's fun. It makes me think back, sort of reminiscing a little bit. So when I was in high school, there was a friend of mine where his mom had like recently got divorced, and so she was always gone on the weekends, like I don't know, on dates or whatever. And so we're like 16, 17. We had like free run of like the house, kind of thing, doing whatever
movie
we want.
night.
And so it was like every Friday, Saturday night, it was like movie night. And so the one guy would literally go to the video store and rent like a giant stack of movies, and we'd be up till like 4 a.m. watching stuff.
Same.
And but it would be he would pick like this was the era of just make anything and put it out on video because video stores needed as kind of like streaming where they just needed as much content as possible.
Yeah.
And so they're cranking out all these like crazy, weird action movies and horror movies and things like that.
Yeah.
So like Evil Dead 2 was one of those where we watched this thing, I don't know how many times. And anytime somebody new would kind of like come into our little friend group, be like, have you seen Evil Dead 2? And they'd be like, no. We'd be like, it's time to watch Evil Dead 2. Everybody would get together, watch Evil Dead 2, and then just this ridiculous, watching any crazy, weird thing you can just find on a video shelf that had a strange title, basically.
Nice. Yeah. I was kind of like in that same boat in that we would do like the sleepover thing, and my house or my mom's house was like the cool house. Like everybody wanted to come and hang out there because they were lenient in like the amount of friends we could have over, and it was always like not a party because I wasn't cool enough to throw parties, but it was always a movie party, like watching movies, like watching Lord of the Rings, the Star Wars films, and like making a marathon out of it. It was that was the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of it progressed into the 90s then with like Mystery Science Theater 3000 and just kind of watching that. So I'm gonna give a couple of random films that I'm gonna suggest for people to watch that they may have never heard of in their entire lives, but are amazing.
Do it.
One, the action film Stone Cold from like 1991, starring Brian Bosworth.
Okay.
Like, awesome. Like one of the best like trash action films like, ever made. It's tremendous. Two, Hell Comes to Frogtown.
Hell Comes to Frogtown.
Starring Roddy Piper, the former wrestler who was also in They Live, which They Live like amazing. One of like just a great film from that same kind of era. But Hell Comes to Frogtown, it's great. It's literally like post-apocalyptic time period where all men on the planet are basically infertile due to like nuclear fallout.
Yeah. Except
for Roddy Piper.
That's funny.
And you've got like these mutant frog people, hence the Frogtown, and it's amazingly ridiculous.
Okay.
And there's another actor that did a ton of these B straight to video action movies named Tim Thomerson.
Yeah.
And he did this movie called Doll Man, and he's basically like a cop from the future, but in a sort of a parallel universe. And he somehow gets, I'm trying to remember exactly the movie, somehow gets like transported into our universe because he's chasing like a criminal. But when he comes through from one universe to the next, he's only like 12 inches tall. So it's like this 12-inch tall cop with like the trench coat and like the gun and everything from like the future, but he's only 12 inches tall, like chasing down this criminal through time kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's Doll Man. It's
Doll Man.
Amazing.
Well, you know what this reminds me of? The Texas Theater in Dallas, every Tuesday they have Tuesday Night Trash, and they show all of these kinds of movies that you're describing. And it's always like, like monkeys from outer space that come and invade New York City, or like the aliens that come and team up with the bears to take over a village, like those kinds of movies, like the ones you're describing right now. Every night on Tuesday, and it's free. Tuesday Night Trash at the Texas Theater. Great place to be.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to start going there on Tuesday nights.
Yeah, I think that's your second home. I just
no, because those are so much fun. They're it's like they're so bad that they're good.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
I love that.
Like the old Ed Wood movies. Just amazing garbage, but it's a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, well now like as you're talking, I'm thinking of like my movie journey, and when I was younger, I feel like as I've gotten older, that sounds weird to say, my like soul has gotten older, because when I was younger I was watching like big popcorn movies, or Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, like I just mentioned. But as I've gone older, I've gone older in my movie taste too, because like instead of like, I feel like sometimes I would rather watch like this random like 1960s film from Germany than go and watch the recent horror film at AMC. And so, like, if that makes sense, like my movie taste has like gone backwards.
No, I think it makes perfect sense because, when you reach a point where you've watched like a million superhero movies and all these other kind of movies, like I don't remember which movie it was I was watching. Maybe it was Superman versus Batman or something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe not that one. one of those or something.
Yeah.
I remember sitting there and like the action scene at the end of the film was so long, I was getting bored.
Yeah.
I was like, when is this going to be over? Like, how long can you draw on this action scene?
Yeah.
And they're like, buildings are collapsing, the entire city's being destroyed, and like, how many millions of people are they killing in this movie?
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's reflected a lot of times in, you know, you see like older audiences are typically the ones who go to the movies more than younger audiences. And I think part of that is the fact that they grew up going to movies. But also a lot of the films that are successful outside of your big popcorn films are more serious dramas or like serious subject matter that, you know, that focuses on character instead of, you know, just blowing things up and having you know, crazy special effects.
Well, yeah, 100%. I agree with you because I feel like now, not now, like especially like maybe like I don't know the last 5-7 years, I've noticed that I've really wanted to where my movie taste has shifted is watching something that is kind of like reflective of maybe like culture or society at a certain time. So not necessarily like I'm gonna watch a movie that just released in 2023 about something that's happening in 2023. No, like I'm watching something from like 1940 that came out in 1946, and it was about World War II, like as the war just ended, or being filmed during the war in secret, like Rome Open City, for example. Like
different perspectives from different time periods, and just approaches towards, you know, men and women and race and culture and all that kind of stuff. And it is interesting to watch some of those. Some of those films obviously would not get made today. But it's fine. It's not like, I mean, it was made in the time period that it was made in. Like, I love watching the old, you know, film noir detective films from, you know, black and white films from back, you know, in the 40s and everything. And then so interestingly, I'll go on a slight film noir tangent. Interestingly, about film noir with the femme fatale character and everything was a little bit of a direct response to World War II and post-World War II women really doing more in the workforce. And then when the men came back from World War II, not wanting to leave the workforce and being more empowered. And so the filmmakers at that time, you know, kind of portraying sort of these like evil women in a negative light as the femme fatales, as a little bit of an unconscious response to you know, more women being, you know, sort of involved in society and the workforce and not just being the homemaker kind of thing. So really interesting, you know, like from a historical perspective, when you think of like when films are made and what was happening in society at those times when the films are being made.
No, that's good to know. And for the listeners out there, you might think, how does Tony know this? Well, he also used to be or is still a professor.
Well,
adjunct professor.
Not right now.
Adjunct,
at the moment. Yeah, adjunct professor. So I have an MFA in film and television. Yeah. In addition to being in the industry for 20 years and making movies and film commission and all that, and so I've taught film. And I had one student. I was doing like a history of film kind of class thing.
My kind of class.
And I would go through different eras and different subjects. And at one point somebody said, "Are we ever going to watch something in color?" just showing black and white movies.
Failed.
And I was like, not with that attitude.
No.
It's like, we might watch nothing but black and white the rest of the semester.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And that also reminds me, when I was in college, the course that I took that turned me on to these kinds of films that we're talking about was like a cultures through history. So you watched the first film ever made, A Trip to the Moon. Yeah. And then you went from there and you learned about like Louise Maillet, and then you learned about films that came up in Eastern Europe and how it shifted to like Asia and how that came to America, and like what everything like the gold rush in California did for the film industry and how that popped up. So yeah,
and I can. Do you know Jacksonville, Florida was almost Hollywood? Oh, how different would it have been if Jacksonville would have been like what ended up being the epicenter of the industry instead of California?
That was in another I was gonna say in another multiverse.
Yeah, it's an alternate reality where Jacksonville is Hollywood, basically.
I'm sure Quentin Tarantino will make a film about it at some point.
At some point. You know, it's actually somebody told me this yesterday as well. I was at a big dinner at South by with a bunch of people, and somebody said that Walt Disney almost bought a bunch of swampland outside of New Orleans to create Disney World instead of Florida, but something with like politicians or whatever didn't want to sell him all of the land. And so think of how different Florida would have been the last 50 years with no Disney, so you'd have no Universal, none of those theme parks, nothing that Orlando is. and it was all outside New Orleans instead, what that area would be because of that. It would be completely different. I would bet that Florida would have half the population that it does if that hadn't been created and helped grow the entire state.
Yeah, I mean, that would be crazy. Yeah, the world would be different. Because I mean, Hollywood impacts everything. Like Hollywood is Hollywood, but I mean, there's studios everywhere, and so many studios around the world like take inspiration from Hollywood and want to be this big thing. But yeah, I mean, that would be very definitely different.
Yeah, and it's interesting because television is really a cultural export from the United States. Like, it's really, if you think about it, there's oil and gas and wheat and beef and corn, I don't know, whatever other stuff, that we export as the U.S. But the largest and historically largest cultural or export in general for the United States has been culture.
Yeah.
And, film, television, music, all of that, like, number one, hands down.
Yeah.
Like, if you travel somewhere, you're in Germany and you say, hey, I'm the Dallas Film Commission. They say, Dallas, a TV series. It was like 40 plus years ago.
Yeah.
And they still remember.
We hear it every day.
Yeah, exactly. And they still remember, like, that show.
Yeah.
Or, like, Miami Vice from 40 years ago. Really interesting just to think of how, the culture that the U.S. exports has such an impact on not just the rest of the world, but the opinions that they think of the country.
Yeah.
I was in Switzerland once because I do like an annual snowboarding trip there every year, and we were
casual.
Let's throw that, just a little slide that in, just a little, very bougie sounding. My annual trip to Switzerland every year. And there was a Swiss guy who was me and a couple of buddies, and there was like a NFL football playoff game on or something like that. It was like January, and my one buddy was like cheering loudly, and he was just like, "Oh, Americans!" And he's like, "You don't even live in a real country." He's like, "You are." He's like, "It's all fake. There's nothing real about what you do.
It's a facade.
It's all a facade." Yeah, he was just like I went on this like long tangent, and was just like, "What do you want? You want me to argue with you about it? I mean, obviously it's real.
Yeah,
it exists, but." But that's like a perception for a lot of people.
Yeah, I get that. Going back to what we were just talking about culture and like films being representative of culture, what I've noticed recently is, and I noticed this with this year's Oscar nominations, is like I felt like 5 years ago we always saw like the Brad Pitts and the Leonardo DiCaprios, like, and these big blockbuster films, and these were like the drivers of the industry. And now, like, ever since studios like A24 and Neon and these more like genre niche studios have popped up, the culture of film has shifted so much in that now I'm seeing like the A24 logo everywhere, more than the Warner Brothers logo. And I'm seeing the Neon logo pop up more than the Marvel logo. And those are the films that are like excelling at the box office and with audiences more than the popcorn movies.
Yeah, well, the studios don't make the small and the mid-budget movie anymore. Like historically for, even talking about like the sort of the era and the launch of the blockbuster in the 80s and through the 90s and even early 2000s, they still made those 5, 10, 20, $30 million films, but they just don't make any of them anymore. Now they're just making $200 million films, and it's just a formula thing. And so sort of that quality, not that it's not quality filmmaking, because obviously there's the technical skill is super high, but that character approach of stories that people really like. And so that's been part of the problem with the Oscars ratings over the last several years, why they've been, and I don't know what they were for the most recent Oscars, but why they've been declining every year is because general audiences that want to watch the Oscars want to see the movies that are the big movies. So I would imagine, because Top Gun was nominated, that would have a big effect for the Oscars for 2023 on what the ratings were, even though it only won like best sound design or something was like the only award that it won. But it was pretty obvious, like, before the Oscars even started, like everybody knew who was going to win everything.
Yeah, so. And I think it gets obvious when you have like the Producers Guild and the DGA, like those award shows, and the BAFTAs, like who is going to actually win. Like I think the last one before the Oscars every year is the Producers Guild or Screen Actors Guild, but it's like the last one is like, oh, X and X is gonna win because they won there, and it's always like they win at the Oscars because they won there.
Yeah, and you just kind of, well, because it's the same people voting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly why. Yeah, it's the same people voting.
It's like the same people are voting for that one are probably going to vote for it again in here. So
yeah,
with the awards thing it's I don't know, it's interesting to say the least. But yeah, like companies like A24 are the ones that are really putting out like some of the more unique content. And the independent film world has just changed so much. I had a conference call with a sales company, a sales agent on a particular film, a week or so ago, and he was saying that right now, 2023 is the worst that he's seen it in 40 years as far as what buyers are paying for independent films, and so it's driving the cost down, which then forces the budgets down even lower on films, and it's just like a weird space because you've had all this consolidation with the major studios, and so they're making less, and now everybody's Disney's cutting $5.5 billion out of the budget. Like those are dollar numbers that you hear the number, but it's just not even fathomable to realize how much money that is.
Like how does the internal office change? Also because they're cutting out the billions of dollars. Yeah. Like what does the next day at work look like? Imagine being inside Disney and like seeing the headline like your company just cut out $5.5 billion.
Yeah. So
what does your next day look like?
Yeah. So something like Disney Plus that they had been, making all of these shows. That's part of the reason why they're saying, well, we're going to focus on story and, really character development a little more and really spreading out our offerings. Well, yeah, because they cut $5 billion from the budget, so you can't make it because no one's going to pay for it.
Yeah, yeah. And is it true that, maybe I need to check my source on this, but like Disney Plus only recently popped up overseas?
No,
it's some territories.
It's been probably in some territories, but Disney Plus had a deal with I think it's Hotstar in India, and so like Disney Plus was being offered in India for like much cheaper than it was being offered in the U.S. through another outlet kind of thing. But I think they once they build up Disney Plus, they were deciding to like drop that from it to basically make it more profitable because all these streaming services, Disney Plus, HBO Max and stuff, they're losing money. They're losing like, I don't know the exact number, somebody can look it up, but $1 billion+ a year on these services because and so it's funny because now it's circling back to what the old model was, which was we make the stuff and then we'll license it to other people, other services to pay for it instead of keeping it all ourselves. And so, HBO Max was one of the first ones to start doing that when they brought their new CEO, David Zaslav, in. He was like, we need to cut a lot of money, and how do we make more money? Oh, we're going to pull these off of, like Westworld, they're pulling off of HBO Max and literally licensing it to other...
Yeah, I think it's going to Tubi. I saw recently where it's going. It's going to like not like a Hulu or something. Yeah. It's like a Tubi or one of those, which is crazy. Yeah, the whole HBO Max thing, when that was happening, like I was on Twitter and people were like bashing HBO, like, where are these movies going? Like they're just randomly being deleted. And I was like, oh, imagine like making a movie and it goes to a streaming service and then they remove it and it's like, where does it go now? Like you're gonna have the file on your laptop, but how do you get it back out there?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and so that's why they'll license it to other outlets and other international outlets because when people are if you're only paying whatever your $7, $8, $15 a month for your HBO, and so that's when that money comes in, that's all you got to to pay for your streaming service or whatever. And so, but oh hey, if we license it to all these other things, it's basically the cable model. Like everybody got rid of cable, and now it's all being packaged or put together in a way so it's kind of cable again. So everything goes in those cycles. So just like fashions. Like I was in Austin for South by South recently and walking around and just seeing the clothes people are wearing, and I'm like, I feel like it's the year 2000 all over again because it looks like everybody's wearing stuff from like 2000, 2001, like that era of wardrobe kind of thing. And so I think we just went through like a mid 90s cycle, and now it's Yeah.
Oh, you just name dropped a really good film, mid 90s, Jonah Hill's first film. If anyone has seen that, that is a great movie. I think it's another A24 film too.
Yeah, that's A24 as well.
Yeah, that was a great one. I was just going to talk about something that my mind just completely went blank.
Well, we've been all over the board on topics today.
Yeah. speaking of streaming services, by the way, we love HBO. Last of Us, we're Game of Thrones people. We're the House of the Dragon. We're not bashing on HBO. We love HBO. But what streaming services are you on?
Well, so I actually canceled my HBO not too long ago.
Awkward. Cut it out.
But I will pick it back up when the next Game of Thrones, House of Dragon or whatever comes back on. And then at that time I'll catch up on like Last of Us and the other ones. But I was just paying for so many. I'm like, why am I paying for all these?
Yeah.
So I cut the HBO for a while. I still have Disney Plus because I paid it, annual for a year. Amazon Prime, because that's how Amazon gets you anyways. Like I initially got it to watch the stuff, and now I just buy everything on Amazon Prime, and that's where they make the money. So they don't care if they're losing money because they're buying stuff, and that's where their cash comes from. Which that's what it is. I haven't picked up Paramount Plus yet, but I'll probably do that soon because I do want to watch 1923, and then there's a bunch of other which filming in the DFW area, Fort Worth.
There it
is the new Bass Reeves, the spin-off of 1883, which is about the first black U.S. Marshal in the United States, and so looking forward to that. But that's being filmed currently. So
I'll have to up my subscription once the show drops and comes out.
You gotta support local, right?
Yeah, gotta support your locals. Yeah,
and Netflix, of course. That's and so I'm gonna tell everybody a hack, and I think I've told you this hack that I have.
Okay,
and
here it is.
And I mentioned to somebody the other day, and they're like, I'd have never thought of that. And it is Netflix DVDs. People are like, what? Netflix still does DVDs? Yes, Netflix still does DVDs. And the trick is there are all these streaming services. And if you want to watch a movie or a TV show that are on all these streaming services, you have to pay for the streaming service. Or if you have Netflix DVD, for example, when I decided I wanted to watch all of the Yellowstone seasons that I hadn't watched, I just ordered them on Netflix DVD. I didn't have to pay for another streaming service. They show up at my house. I watch the first disc, send it back. A couple days later, you get another one. And I was able to watch the entire Yellowstone TV show without having to pay for streaming service because it is available on DVD. Yeah. I did the same thing with 1883. We watched it all on that. The Fabelmans that I'm going to watch this weekend, I don't have to go on demand and pay for it. I got the Netflix DVD to watch it. And so literally by having Netflix and by having the DVD portion, it enables you to watch this content that is on all these other streaming services without paying for the other streaming services. Yeah. Because DVDs still exist.
Yeah. There it is, guys. Yeah, no, DVDs still exist. I'm a Blu-ray collector. So, 100%. I have a hack as well.
Okay, let's hear it.
Here we go. So if you go to, because I'm a Netflix subscriber, Prime subscriber, Mubi, and the Criterion channel. Those are my four. I think I have Hulu. No, I'm like a Hulu. Never mind. We'll skip that part. Anyways,
this is a non-Hulu podcast. There are great things on Hulu that I have not seen, but I just don't want to pay for another service.
Yeah, there are great things on Hulu, and it's weird because like Hulu is like the movies that come out of there are very surprising. Like Caleb Landry Jones, he won Best Actor at the Cannes Film Festival last year for a film called Nitram, and I was like trying to find out where can I watch this movie. Like I can't find it anywhere, and it was on Hulu. Like of all places, like I would have never known to think that this film was on Hulu, and there it was. So like they have some. I
wonder if you can get it on Netflix DVD.
I wonder. Yeah. So they have some hidden gems, but so if you go to Amazon Prime, which I have a subscription to, and so you can get the Shudder subscription, which horror films for like $8.99 or $9.99 or something. But if you subscribe to Amazon Prime and subscribe to Shudder through there, you get it for like $1.99. But it also comes with that. It comes with the Sundance Now channel, and it comes with IFC Films channel for like an extra $1.99. So instead of paying for them individually, subscribe to them through Amazon Prime, and you get them all for like less than $5.
That sounds like cable.
Cable. There you go. Yeah. No, it's great. I love it. Shudder has some great films too. Yeah, they have some great films. I saw recently, it was a Swedish horror film, and it was about these kids who noticed that they have superpowers, like telepathic powers, and they're secretly, the whole film is told from the perspective of kids, and they secretly go on this like journey through the woods, and they start fighting each other, but all using their telepathic powers, and the adults don't know what they're doing because the adults think it's just their imagination.
Right.
But they're like going at it, like throwing trees at each other, and like there's like, and the parents don't know what they're doing, like out in the woods every day, and it is good.
Yeah. Okay.
It's so good.
That's good. I'll check it out.
Yeah.
There's a friend of mine stars in a couple of films on. It's really more like almost an anthology series on Shudder called Scare Package. And so a friend of mine, Jeremy King, who's an actor in Florida, he actually, it's interesting. He's done several films here in Texas with this group of filmmakers in Texas that liked him so much they keep flying him back and forth to do these movies in Texas. And so he did Scare Package, which they did for Shudder, and it was super successful. And then they did a sequel to it, and so that sequel came out. So check out Scare Package.
Nice.
People seem to like that.
Scare Package, okay. And it's on Shudder, you said?
Yeah, I hope I got the streaming service right.
Okay. Well, we'll do a fact check at the end.
But I'm pretty sure that is correct. That's on Shudder, and it's called Scare Package.
Good. Do you have any favorite directors besides like the Star Wars films or like the Lord of the Rings films that have really caught your eye recently? Or maybe not favorite, just directors that have caught your eye in the past couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, recently I rewatched a whole bunch of the Akira Kurosawa stuff. I mean, it just sounds very...
I'd fist bump you, but you're a little far from me.
It sounds very prototypical, like film professory to say, go watch Akira Kurosawa. But, stuff like that.
Throne of Blood is like my favorite Kurosawa film.
It's interesting. Like if you watch, speaking of the... because obviously George Lucas was hugely affected by Kurosawa. Watching, I wanted to sit down and rewatched Mandalorian season 2 before third season, started, and watching the one episode with Ahsoka, and I know which one you're talking about. I'm like, this is all Kurosawa, like literally.
It's like Seven Samurai.
This is the way that it's shot is Kurosawa. Like it was just like I was just nerding out just watching it. Watching Star Wars and then thinking of like the Japanese master, in and of itself. So anyways, I know there are modern directors and stuff that I like, but I still fall back on the old goodies.
Speaking of Kurosawa, Ikiru was remade recently with Bill Nye.
Okay.
And it's called Living. And it premiered in Texas. It premiered at the Lone Star Film Festival out there in Fort Worth.
Nice.
And he was nominated for Best Actor this year for that film. I haven't seen it, but that's high on my list. But it's like one of those films, going back to what we said earlier, it's like I need to watch it at the right time when I'm maybe a little bit sad, a little mellow.
Yeah, it goes back to there's too much to watch.
There's a lot to watch. Yeah.
Well, before we wrap up here, any final words on favorite films or recommendations for people before we go?
I would say check out this German director. His name is Christian Petzold.
Okay.
He hones in on World War II a lot in his films, but he's not making films about World War II. He's making character-driven stories that take place during World War II.
Right.
And he has a new film coming out in 2023 at the end of the year. Check him out. He's one of my favorites right now.
Well, I can watch anything World War II or that time period. Love films. Kind of set.
What about you? Any last notes?
One film that I really love, German film from 1997, Run Lola Run.
Run Lola Run. Yeah.
Just such a fun, cool. Love that movie. I don't know what it is about that, but yeah, Run Lola Run. And you know what? Actually, the most recent Clerks that Kevin Smith did.
Yeah.
I actually liked that one. I hadn't liked maybe a lot of stuff that he had done recently, but I was like, he did a good job with the final Clerk, so it was good.
Nice, awesome. Well, for all our listeners out there, check us out at Dallas Film Commission on our Instagram. DM us your favorite movies. Maybe we'll give you a shout out.
Yeah, we'll talk about on one of our episodes here as we just go down the nerd rabbit hole and talk about movies that we love.
We'll keep doing these.
Yeah.
These are fun.
Thanks for joining us, and listen to the next episode.
Thanks for joining.